What's up, guys? 1-2 day yesterday's streaks have to come to an end at some point. The hot streak that I was on halted a little bit yesterday, and the streak of full game MLB totals also ended yesterday, unfortunately. I got the Oklahoma City Thunder right when I realized, I should probably jump on that given the situation in game 2 that was there, so that worked out well. I think there were a bunch of professionals in agreement on that one. Professionals were in agreement on the Toronto Blue Jays, too, and they didn't get there. I got them at minus 112 in the morning, and they went off as like a minus 130 something favorite, probably. So getting the best in the number there, and then they still wound up losing by 1 run. Nothing you could really do about that. Just didn't fall the right way. And then the full game total that I finally lost to drop to whatever, 11-1 now, 12-1 in full game totals, whatever. That was looking like it was going to hit easily early, as both starters, as I thought, were terrible in the game. They both got knocked out by like the third or fourth inning. It was a 3-2 game in the third inning, a 5-run game already. So at that point, all you need is whatever, 4 more runs, I guess, in the final 6 innings of the game, with both bullpens having to come in early. No more runs were scored in the entire game, and it wound up 3-2. Same score that it was in the third inning. Wound up being the final. Very unfortunate there. That line, I actually wound up getting an 8.5 on that one, too. I had thrown it out there as a 9 early in the morning that I was watching the market, and it dropped to 8.5 quite quickly. So there was disagreement with me in the market on that one. But I don't know, man. The way that one wound up not working out for me, early on in that game seemed like the over was actually the right play. And the over in the first 5 innings hit because 5 runs were scored in the third inning. So it's one of those other unfortunate situations where the first 5 inning version of your wager hits, but the full game does not. We'll move on to today. We do have an MLB card today. I only have one play today, and it's in the NBA playoffs. MLB, we do have a few things caught my eye because we do have a few pitchers who haven't really been seen before. You do have, with Minnesota, Simeon Woods Richardson is making his second start in the majors ever. So I think he would probably have an advantage in that one, but Minnesota's just a giant favorite against the White Sox. I don't really want to get involved in that, and I think the White Sox at this point are trying to avoid a sweep. So probably you're not really getting much value for laying a huge price with Minnesota, even though they do have a pitcher who's unfamiliar to the opposing hitters. And Richardson did have a good start in his major league debut, although I don't know how good he actually really is. Houston and Chicago, actually, both of these starters are actually unfamiliar to the opposing lineup. Somehow Justin Verlander has almost never been seen before by the Cubs hitters. Only 2 of their hitters have ever seen him before. Swanson 0 for 3 off him lifetime, and then Gomes actually hits him pretty well, 12 for 45, although no home runs for Gomes against him in a 10-1 strikeout walk ratio. But other than those 2 guys, nobody in the Cubs lineup has ever seen Justin Verlander before. He, of course, came back. He made his major league return in his previous start, and he actually did pretty well. And then Javier Assad for Chicago. For the Cubs, he's been pitching pretty well as well. And the Houston Astros only have 1 at bat against him ever. Caratini's 1 for 1 off him, but other than that, they have never seen him before either. So that is advantage to both starters. So I would look to potentially play an under in that game, which I believe you'd have to take it like under 8 or something like that. I don't see the percentages on that yet. Problem I have with that is I don't really want to go first 5 necessarily there, although probably if you're going to play the under there, I'd say you probably should go the first 5 innings in that one instead of going full game, because Assad doesn't really go that deep into games. And yesterday, the Chicago Cubs used a decent amount of their bullpen yesterday, I believe, to hold off Houston. Houston is also trying to avoid being swept here by the Cubs, man. I think this is the last game of the series. Houston on a really bad streak right now. So you could actually potentially play Houston as a side in this one as well. They look like they're up from minus 120 to minus 125 as a road favorite and have 82% of the cash, 69% of the tickets. I just don't want to fade Assad necessarily because he has that unfamiliarity going for him with the Houston hitters basically never having seen him before, so that probably gives him an early advantage. But the Cubs did also use 4 of their relievers yesterday, including some of their best relievers, and Houston had to go to their pen a bit early yesterday as well, even though they only used 3 relievers. So I don't like the situation the bullpens are in necessarily. And I don't think Houston's bullpen has been that good this year either. So I don't really trust the full game under to the extent where I actually want to play it in that game. And then as far as pitchers being unfamiliar to the opposing hitters, you do also have San Diego with Randy Vasquez up from minus 135 to minus 145, 93% of the tickets on them, 98% of the cash. So, of course, they are a public road favorite against the Colorado Rockies, who, of course, the Rockies is one of the worst teams in baseball, really, unfortunately for them. But Vasquez, I mean, the price might be reflective of the actual situation going on here because Vasquez has never been seen before by the Cubs hitters. I don't believe he's a pretty young pitcher. But I don't know if I necessarily trust him to go deep into a game to the point where I want to lay that road price with him. He does have the unfamiliarity going for him, so that should be an advantage for him early. But he's a guy, if you look at his scouting reports, he does have like a mid to upper 90s fastball, a couple of different fastball pitches that are good, a couple of seemingly decent breaking pitches. Doesn't have that much of a major league history so far to go on. Hasn't played that much in the majors yet. Pretty young guy. But his scouting reports basically had him projected as a relief man rather than a starter. So it seems like he might not have the ability to go that deep into games. So I don't know if I trust laying a road price there with San Diego. Colorado does have the worst pitcher going, though, as well, with Dakota Hudson. Although his stats against San Diego are actually better than they are against some other opponents, but he's still not a very good pitcher. So I don't know. But I just don't trust any of this enough to actually go with a play on any of this. Dodgers, I think, also probably have an advantage with Yamamoto pitching. Washington, totally unfamiliar with him, whereas Washington has Mackenzie Gore pitching, who I think has been pretty good so far this year, but he has been seen by the Dodgers for. He has mediocre numbers against the Dodgers, but they do have a lot of history against him, whereas Yamamoto has the advantage of not having been seen before. He's been pitching well so far this year, along with having that advantage where it's his first stint in the majors. So these hitters seem to have some difficulty with him. So that's what's going on in Major League Baseball. I don't think there's anything I can really get involved in here in the majors. NHL, we do have 2 playoff games today. Florida, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and the Islanders. These are both 2-0 series that are flipping to the home site of the underdog of the road team in the series. I don't trust playing the zig-zag here, which is more of an angle in the NBA than it is in the NHL, where you have teams that fall down 0-2 in the NBA tend to do decently in Game 3 back at home in a lot of cases. NHL, I think it's less pronounced, but also I think both of these situations don't really call for it, where Tampa Bay, I mean, they're coming off an overtime loss in Game 2 to Florida, so I would potentially look to play the home team in either of these games if they really got destroyed in the first 2 games. But that's not the case. Tampa lost both games by 1. Game 2 went into overtime, so that could even serve to maybe have a hangover effect there. And Tampa Bay is not a very unfamiliar venue for Florida to be playing in. And then Carolina and the Islanders, I mean, these are both divisional matchups as well. Both of these matchups are teams in the same division. Florida and Tampa, I believe, both in the Atlantic, and Carolina and the Islanders both in the Metro. Carolina is a decent-sized road favorite. Tampa is actually a very small home favorite in their game against Florida. Carolina has looked good so far, but although I do think the results have been maybe a little bit misleading, as the Islanders actually outshot them in Game 1, and Carolina was still able to get through that. Carolina actually completely dominated the Islanders statistically in Game 2, but that was the game where the Islanders were actually winning the game 3-0, I think late in the second period, and wound up losing by multiple goals. So it's not really a situation where I want to come in on the Islanders either. I think that could serve to put them in a bit of a hangover as well. It does look like the money is moving Carolina up a little bit, and the cash percentage is actually on Carolina a little bit. Carolina, they surprisingly, they actually haven't been playing as well necessarily in the series as you might expect them to play. I mean, they got outshot in Game 1, and then I think in Game 2, the Islanders had very few shots. So Carolina really dominated the shots in Game 2, but Carolina's goaltending actually was kind of a failure in that game. So I don't know what to think about those. And then the NFL draft, I'll just mention quickly, is also tonight. I don't really do any betting in the NFL draft, but it does seem, given that you can bet each specific spot for the first several spots of the draft, it seems like the first 4 draft picks are all pretty heavy favorites at this point and are almost predetermined at this point. It seems like Caleb Williams will go number 1. I'm assuming likely to the Bears, who are keeping that pick. It's going to be a quarterback draft, man, where it looks like the top 3, the favorites to be the top 3 draft picks are all these top 3 quarterbacks, which I don't think is any surprise. Jaden Daniels looks like he will go second to Washington. And of course, both of those teams are kind of in the market for quarterbacks as well. And the third pick, the Patriots, look like they will be taking Drake May out of UNC. So Caleb Williams, USC, and then Jaden Daniels, LSU, and then Drake May from North Carolina, University of North Carolina. UNC, it does look like he is a heavy favorite to go in that 3 spot to the Patriots. And then the number 4 spot is a little bit more questionable. Seems like you might see a team trade into that spot, which is held by the Giants currently, but it seems like they might trade the pick away potentially. But it seems like either way, the best player that's left on the board at that point is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., the top wide receiver in the top wide receiver on the board, I should say, in this draft class is what the term that I was trying to think of there. Of course, Marvin Harrison's son. Marvin Harrison, of course, is a very good wide receiver on the Indianapolis Colts, along with Peyton Manning for a while there too. So his son, very talented wide receiver as well. He is projected to go 4th based on the odds. The odds have him favored to go 4th, and I don't know if that's going to be through some team trading into that pick or what, but that's the situation with the draft. Like I said, I don't really do much with the draft, but it is tonight. I know a lot of people like to watch it, but we do have playoffs going on. Over in the NBA, 3 zig-zag spots where you have 3 teams that are down 0-2, all coming into these games, playing at home now off of 2 road losses. I will say every one of these totals has dropped too, because early in the playoffs so far, the totals have been going under to a ridiculous degree. But I think that's also kind of expected in these game 1s, at least. You tend to get unders in first playoff games because you have a lot of teams are rested coming into those games. They play intense defense as well. So I think at some point that's going to turn around a little bit, and you won't see these games being as low scoring, although they are still playoff games. So you will still see defensive intensity. So the games probably will be lower than what you're seeing like towards the end of the regular season when games didn't matter. But these totals have all dropped. In every one of these games, have dropped to such an extent. They've all dropped like 3-4 points, basically. It's got to get to a point where you don't really have value on the under anymore with how low these totals are now. So even though it looks like the professional money is actually coming in on the under in every one of these games, it looks like, even more so. I don't think I would trust playing the under in any of them. And it does look like the money is on every home team as well. The first game up is Cavs Magic, and this is the game I'm going to be on, which is going to be to lay the Magic -2. It looks like it's the best you can get there. It looks like it's going up further with juice. It looks like at some point they open a 1-point underdog. I'm not sure about that, but basically still just taking them to kind of win the game. I mean, if it gets to a point where you want to like find a money line, you might be able to lay like -120, 125 on the money line of the Magic. This is the one spot where I think the zig-zag will be the strongest and work the most effectively. The Magic do have 68% of the tickets, but 74% of the cash. I don't really see how they're public after how they played in the first 2 games of the series. This has been an ugly, low-scoring series because both of these teams play defense, which is also why this game, I believe, is not even on national TV. Technically, it's on NBA TV, so I think you have to have like a subscription to that to see it or something. Although I think I have that as part of my sports package. I'm pretty sure. So if I actually want to watch this game and watch my money go down the toilet, possibly, then I think I do have the ability to do so. But it does look like the cash is coming in on the side of the Magic. Like I said, I'm surprised that the Cavs have the majority of don't have the majority of the public tickets. I'm surprised the Magic do. I guess the public kind of likes this young Magic team, but both of these teams are better defensively than offensively, really, I would say. Although I guess, well, I don't know, because Cavs have some of the bigger like name players on their team too. So I don't know. It seems like the Cavs would be more of the public team. They won the first 2 games both by double digits, which is also why I like the Magic here. Because the Magic are coming off games where they didn't look good at all, especially offensively. They did not do well at all. Those are both low-scoring, really horrific, ugly-looking games. And now the Magic are at home, where the Magic have had one of the biggest home-road dichotomies in the NBA. They've been a much better home team than a road team. This is a young team. Most of these guys are playing, I believe, like their first home playoff game at this point, and having the crowd behind them, I think is going to propel them a little bit. I think it's a good spot for the Magic, who have been a good home team all year, a much better home team than a road team. So that is why I think this is the strongest play. The fact that I think we're getting a little bit of value because the Magic have really looked bad in this series so far, and they're the much better home team than road team. So I like all of that for a play where the Magic might actually make some adjustments and actually be able to take this game here. Although you're not getting too much value with them, I would say. The Cavs are like a 5-point home favorite. So that means there's been like a 7-point swing here, which is kind of saying both teams would get 3.5 for home court. I think 2.5 to 3 is probably more accurate for NBA playoffs. Magic, maybe you give them a little bit more because their home court has been, they've had one of the better home court advantages in the NBA throughout this season. So we'll see. But I think the Magic will be pumped, will be motivated, and will be able to refocus. Whereas the Cavs, it is possible they get a little bit complacent now that they're up 2-0 and they won each of those games really easily. So I'll take the Magic -2 for the only play today. And then the second game up is Knicks 76ers, where the 76ers, they've shot up from a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite, going through the 4.5. And it does look like they have the public on them with 79% of the tickets on the Sixers. They seem like they've been public all series so far. But in this case, they also have 90% of the cash. So it does look like some of the bigger money is also coming in on the 76ers here to perform better in the zig-zag-zag. The issue that I have with it, I guess I would lean to the 76ers here still, but I think it's weaker than the Magic. I think the Nuggets-Lakers game, which I'll talk about in a minute, I think is the weakest out of all these leans. I think the 76ers is mediocre. I do still lean to the Sixers, but you're not getting really any benefit in this line. Here's the books. They're countering the zig-zag. They know about it. They're even doing it in that Magic game, but I still think -2 is an okay price. The 76ers, though, and the Magic are actually 2.5 point favorite, I think, in the first half, because the books also know that the zig-zag kind of lends itself to that team getting out to a good start. And then sometimes the road team will kind of make adjustments at halftime or whatever and get back into it. So the Magic are actually laying more in the first half than on the full game, which I actually think maybe gives you a little bit more value playing the full game in that one than the first half. But I tend to play full games in the NBA, so that will be a play on the Magic. The 76ers, yeah, like I said, they're up to a 4.5 point favorite here, where the Knicks are actually like somewhere around a 4.5 point home favorite. So you've seen like a 9-point adjustment in this one, which is a bit crazy. Although I think the Knicks were maybe a little bit too overvalued at home. I think they about 3.5 for the Knicks at home. I think was probably about accurate, which would mean the Sixers should probably be about 3 or 3.5 here. I think the Knicks may be the slightly better team. That's only because it looks like Joel Embiid maybe is not totally at 100% right now, though he played better in game 2 than game 1. So maybe he is getting back into it, but he seems like he's not totally 100%. But when he is, the Sixers are much, much better with him than without him, of course. I keep saying they were 31-6 or something with him. I think they're actually 31-8 with Embiid on the season. Although maybe that's including playoffs now. When I looked at the stat, I'm not sure. Maybe it was 31-6, and now they're 0-2 in the playoffs with him. But the Sixers, certainly a way, way better team with Embiid, but his health might be a little bit in question, and maybe they rushed him back a little bit just because we're like, well, I think we're going to need him for the playoffs here. 76ers still could have won both games in New York, though. They blew big leads in both games. It looked like the 76ers had a handle on both games. And now after that, the 76ers, I think, had a decent-sized lead really late in game 2, and I don't know how they wound up losing that game and blowing that lead. Very strange. Seems like 76ers maybe lacking like coaching here. It seems like the Knicks probably have the coaching edge with Thibodeau there. 76ers, I don't know, man. It seems like the fact that they didn't win either of those games with the fact that they're winning like that in both of those games is crazy. They couldn't get there with either of them. It should have at least been a split. They could have won both of those games. And of course, as you know, I went with the public and took the Sixers to win the series in my bracket, which it looks like that's not going to happen anymore. But I think the Sixers are going to be in desperation mode, although you're paying a price for it. I mean, teams that are down 0-2 tend to be in desperation mode, but the Magic, I think, are kind of like the team that less was expected out of. Like the Magic, like the Cavs have been in the playoffs a couple of years in a row. Magic now have a couple of playoff games under their belt now, so I think that inexperience factor kind of goes away a little bit now that they played a couple of playoff games. The Magic, I think, are more playing with like house money at this point because they didn't really even expect to be here when the season started. Whereas the 76ers, I mean, they expected to be one of the best teams in the East with Embiid. Of course, he was out for 2 months which really hampered them because I think with him at full strength, they are the second best team in the Eastern Conference. And I don't know how the Celtics lost yesterday, man. It was just an absolutely unfathomable 3-point percentage from Miami last night. Absolutely insane. Even though the Celtics kind of did that in game one, that is kind of part of the Celtics game that they rain threes. But I don't know. I mean, it was both games are a little bit of an outlier as far as the 3-pointers are concerned. And both teams in that series that dominated in the paint lost each individual game. Celtics dominated the paint last night, and Miami had the upper edge and had the upper hand in the paint in game one, and both of those were losers. Very strange series there. I mean, the Celtics better be able to get through as being such a huge favorite. It better just be a blip there with that ridiculous outlier 3-point percentage. But the Celtics were not defending the three enough. I think they got complacent a little bit after game one. But back to Knicks Sixers. Yeah, I do lean to the Sixers with the price. You're really not getting any benefit of the line value there with the Sixers. And the fact that the Sixers were up in both of those games and then blew it, it's like, is that going to hang them over a little bit into this game? Because I think when you have a big lead like that and then you wind up blowing it, that puts you in a worse situation than like the Magic are, where the Magic just got blown out in both games. So the Magic, it's going to be like they really have nothing to lose here and they have all the adjustments to make. But if you're the Sixers, you played pretty well in both those games, well enough to have late leads in both of them, and you couldn't come through on either of them. So how is that going to affect you mentally coming into this game, man? That might have a little bit more of a hangover effect. And then to that effect, the Lakers are kind of in a similar spot there, which is why I don't like either of these. And I actually lean to the Nuggets in this late game really slightly, but I think it's the weakest of the three leans. Even though the Lakers are in the zig-zag, the Lakers have flipped from a 2-point dog to a 1-point favorite. It looks like they have 81% of the tickets, 87% of the cash. I don't really know how the Lakers are this public, even though obviously they do have LeBron and they are the Lakers, but everybody's seen the Nuggets beating the Lakers constantly now, which is also why I don't really like the Lakers here. And the Nuggets have won 10 games in a row against the Lakers, going back to, I believe, sweeping I wasn't sure what the series outcome was last time I talked about it, the Western Conference Finals last year. I was like, at first I was like, I think it was a sweep. But then I was like, wait a minute, did the Lakers get one of those games? I don't even remember. The Nuggets, I believe, did indeed sweep them. I think they've won 10 games in a row against them between the 2 games in the playoffs here, the 4-game sweep in the playoffs last year, and then 4 regular season matchups. The Nuggets have won all of them, although some of those games have been single-digit wins for the Nuggets. So they haven't won by margin in some of them, like about half of them, actually, the Lakers have kind of hung in the game, but the Nuggets have still won every single one of them. And you're paying a pick-em price here. You're actually, if you want to play the Lakers full game, you're actually having to lay them as a favorite here. I just don't think so, man. I just would not be able to do that. And the Lakers, I think, are in a worse spot than the Sixers, although it's similar to what I just talked about with the Sixers. Lakers had like a 20-point lead in the second half at Denver in game 2. Looked like they were going to be able to steal game 2 and maybe making an interesting series, and they completely fell apart. And Denver somehow was able to get through with the win in that one too. I think you could be seeing potentially a Lakers team that is not going to have that much left in the tank at this point, man. I mean, their top players, LeBron and AD, they're both really, really old at this point, man. You could kind of tell with the way that they played these games where they are playing much worse in the later portions of these games than the earlier portions, to the extent where actually, if you look at these lines, the Nuggets are actually, the Lakers, I believe, are actually a heavier favorite in the first. Well, same with the Magic, actually. I think some books have the Lakers as the favorite in the first half by like 1.5 in this game, and actually have the Nuggets as a 1-point favorite for the game. So a couple of books have the Nuggets as a full game favorite. It's just crazy. But I think it's actually warranted because you've seen the Lakers play a lot better throughout the earlier portions of the game when LeBron is rested. And then it seems like he's just too old to do it, man. He's just kind of out of gas by the end of some of these games. So I would certainly not trust the Lakers in a full game scenario here, but I don't trust them in the early game in this one either, really, given the fact they might be in a huge hangover spot, even though, yes, they are going to be playing at home with basically with their playoff lives kind of on the line at this point. But sometimes when your playoff lives are on the line, you're paying a price for it. So out of all that, I do think the best play and the only play that I will have today is on the Orlando Magic -2. That's going to do it for me, man. Let's get a cash. Come on, let's go 1-0. Peace.